Today, we're talking about the stream description says we're going to talk about the Nifty crop mover, which is what, you might ask. Well, you might ask. So this is something that this is going to be a bit of like a show and tell, I guess, rather than like LRRTech, because this thing is rather than like something where like Tinker Tailor, where I'm actually building it, because this is something that is sort of mostly built already, or it's built already to some extent. So the idea here is that one of the things that comes up fairly often in loading ready run streaming, or when we're doing more fancier layouts for streams, like say when we're doing Dice Friends or Magic streams or whatever, you'll have crops of here. Let me illustrate a cropping situation here. So say we've got say the my camera here is cropped. So I'm like a floating head here. Hey everybody. Now if I so say this is your our face cams. This is like your face cam down here in the corner. Doop doop boop boop. And that's all fine and dandy, but say what if I am doing something and I go like, oh hey, I'm working over here and this is where I'm going to be now. And you're like, oh okay, well that's still on camera, but we've got to move the crop, so but how do we move? Like if we move this, obviously that just moves the thing. And so in XSplit anyway, you would have to recrop it. So we can go, okay, let's recrop this back here. And as far as I know, I did some looking into this and talking with some people, and I think OBS is the same way, where there isn't a thing to there isn't a way to move a source, so like a video or a camera or a picture or whatever, within its crop boundaries. Let me actually, here, what I'll do is I'm just going to give me a border so you can see where the crop boundaries are. There isn't a way to move me within my crop boundaries without like recropping it, basically. So I can, you can change the cropping by clicking and dragging. But if I drag like this, I just move myself around and remove the thing. So the idea here is that, and this is something that actually comes up fairly often, when we're doing this kind of, when we're doing various projects. And if you, like I was originally, and I still do a little bit of sort of page layout stuff. So if you've ever used like Illustrator or InDesign or any sort of page layout stuff, this is a pretty common thing. You'll like double click on a object or like a frame, and then that will so I don't look really short. If you like double click on a frame, and then you'll sort of go into the frame or whatever, and you can move the object around inside the frame. And OBS, as far as I know, OBS has the same limitation. And so this is an interesting idea, because this is something that is very useful to me. And so it's something that I have sort of a vested interest in, and so I was thinking about like ways to fix this problem. And I've come up with a way to fix this problem, an extension that I built for XSplit. But it's not a great way to fix this problem, but it's the best way that I can do it. If you know, it's something that XSplit could do, I feel like relatively easily, like as a part of the program. I think it's something that they should, as OBS could. So it's something that makes a lot of sense integrated into the program. But since I don't run Streamlabs and I have no control over XSplit, I can do what I can, and it's a testament to XSplit's scripting capabilities that I can do this. So let me just show you what this looks like. And in fact, actually, in order to show you what this looks like better, let me switch over to the other PC where I have, because the problem with XSplit is XSplit can't really capture itself very well, so you can't see it. So here, I'll switch over to the PC here. This is just another copy of XSplit running here, and so you can see I've got a video of the Dice Friends Camp Nettleby. This is just a video that happened to be on this computer that was convenient. So say I want Cam here. So I could have a little crop of Cam. But I'm like, I actually want somebody else. I want, say, Surge. So I could do, move the crop over there, whoop, over there. But that doesn't work that great, and, it changes the size of this cropping thing and stuff. So I have this extension here called Nifty Crop Mover. Obviously, you can see I've been doing some work on this. But let's go to the Nifty Crop Mover 2. So this is a little thing. So I can click on here, and you can see I've got the little green square here is what I'm seeing here is the frame, and then this is the object around it. So I can take this, whoop, and drag it around. Whoop. So let's look at Surge. Let's go over here and look at Cam. Let's look at Alex. Let's look at this puzzle. Let's look at Ben. And you can see in the corners here, there's the scaling thing. So I can go, whoop, scale this down. And so if I want to only, so I can scale it down. I can't scale it smaller than the frame, otherwise XSplit gets very weird. It like stretches the edges. It's very cool. Now the one thing, the few little, so the tweaks, or a tweak that I had to make to it that I figured out relatively quickly is that obviously, so this is, I think, 400 pixels across, this little window that I'm working in here. And this is 1920 by 1080, this scene. So obviously, one pixel moving here moves that more than a pixel, right? And so I made there's a modifier key that will sort of slow it down to make it more smooth. The other thing that I figured that and the other thing that I figured out is, or that I added in is something that actually comes up relatively often and is it's sometimes hard to pinpoint, is that if you're cropping in on, say, a camera, you have like you have like a camera that's like a wide shot, and you want to crop in on a face, on just some person's face to make it fill a thing. then you want to be like, oh, I want, so I've got like, say, here. So you can notice here, one of the limitations of this is that XSplit doesn't give me anything, any events to check on when I've resized this. So I have to click off and click on again. But anyway, so say I wanted Cam's face to fill the whole thing here. I can, you know, enlarge this. But if I enlarge it too much, it keeps track of what the real size of the file is. And it goes red. It still lets you do it, but it goes red to let you know that it is now resized past the original resolution of the thing. So theoretically, you're not getting, it's not as high quality as it could be. This was something that we actually, for Dice Friends, if I reset the cropping here, and also make the size better. There we go. Let me just jump forward here. So something we found out for Dice Friends, in the first couple episodes of Dice Friends, the DM camera here, like you know, Kathleen or Cam or Dale, was just a crop of the wide shot, and so we just cropped it on their face. But we realized that it was too too big. Like we were having to zoom in too far. Like the wide shot was too wide to get a crop that was a good size here. And so we now actually use another camera. So the wide shot, there's two cameras right beside each other in the middle of the studio. There's the camera that is the wide shot, and then right beside it, there's another camera that zoomed right in on the DM's face. Yeah, exactly, not enough pixels. So what I thought would be kind of interesting to talk about with this is part of how this works, or is how this works with XSplit's, shall we say, somewhat not creative. It's XSplit, the way XSplit sizes and evaluates things is a little weird and required some math that I was not fully prepared for. Math is hard. So for one thing, you can see here in the properties here, you can see the width and the height and the X and Y positions and stuff. But this is a lie. This is not actually how XSplit is storing the position of this object. XSplit stores everything, the positions of all objects as a percentage of the total size of the stage. So, you know, this will go from, you know, whatever, if it's here, it'll say that the left side of this object is at 0.5, as in it's halfway there, and the right side is at whatever, 0.75. So obviously you can get the real size by multiplying that by the size of your stage. But so the percentage thing, it's a little weird, but it makes sense because you can change the resolution of your stage on the fly, right? You can change your resolution, and as you change the resolution, stuff sort of moves around to fit. So it kind of makes sense. And by the same token, the cropping is done the same way. So if I ask XSplit the size of this object, it gives me the size of this green square here. and then it says, then it tells me how much has been cropped off of each side. So for instance, so if it's like this, it will give me the size of this green square, and then it will say on the left side there's 0 crop, on the top there's, you know, whatever 0.2, like there's 20% cropped off the top, 25% cropped off the bottom, you know, whatever, 70% cropped off the right hand side. That's how XSplit views the thing. And so I have to take that and do some math that probably to anybody who like does work with geometry programming, it's not that hard, but it kind of baked my noodle a little bit trying to figure out how to the transformations for turning XSplit coordinates into HTML coordinates, and then back again, because of course as I'm moving this around, what I'm doing is, you know, if I want to move this object over this way, what I'm actually doing on the, what I'm actually telling XSplit to do is move the cropping, subtract cropping from one side and increase the cropping on the other side while maintaining the size as the same, right? So I don't want to, I'm telling XSplit to don't move this object, just change the left crop, or reduce the right crop and increase the left crop, or reduce the left crop, increase the right crop, and then we move this way and back and forth. So it's a little bit like just to sort of get your mind around how it works, and then of course there's like translating that from like mouse coordinates into there, and then there's also the thing of making sure that it doesn't, that it gets blocked by the object, so that it isn't going to try to crop, it isn't going to try to crop the object into something that won't fit. And the other one is for scaling. You're coming, for one thing, I wanted to make sure that the scaling was always proportional scaling. So it was always, which is a bit of a pain to get right. And then also I wanted, again, to make it block so that it couldn't go below the size of the frame object, right? So it's scaling. And I actually went through a couple of revisions of that. You know, I said there's the crop mover too. This is the new version I made. This is my original crop mover, which works basically the same. But if you watch, see if this comes across. Doesn't really, can't really see it work. See my frustration. So this is actually kind of an interesting point in terms of programming. Something to think about yourself, I think. In particular, I guess JavaScript can be particularly good / bad for this, is that there's a lot of libraries out there, like pre-made libraries and stuff. And that can get you a lot of stuff sort of for free. Like, you know, you can do a lot of stuff that's kind of pre-made. But the problem you run into a lot of the time with this stuff is it won't work for like your specific circumstance. So the first version of this up here, I built using the jQuery UI library, which is a very well-known UI or a library for accessing UI elements, and it has a built-in thing for making an object movable and scalable. And so I was like, perfect, this will be great. But it doesn't have any way, it didn't have any built-in way to restrict it. It had a way to restrict it so that it couldn't go outside, like if you wanted to make sure it couldn't go outside this outer square, you could do that. That was built in. But it didn't have a way to restrict the size, the area it couldn't go within. You could make it so that it couldn't go smaller than a certain size, but you couldn't make it so that it can't go within a certain thing. And so I sort of built kind of a hack to make it work, which is basically like it goes, you can kind of, I don't know if it really shows, it's really that obvious what it's doing, but it basically goes, you can see it kind of bumps a little bit sometimes. Basically what it does is if it gets below, if it gets smaller than this thing here, it kind of pushes it back out. Which sort of worked, but it had some issues. So at a certain point when you're building this stuff and you feel like you have a pretty good idea of like how it works, sometimes it works better to actually build it yourself from scratch. Because then you have sort of full control of how it goes and you can build it to sort of exactly your specifications. So this is actually completely built from scratch. These two share basically no code between them. And this is actually a Vue application, if you know anything about it, which is another JavaScript framework. And I'm much happier with how it does the scaling stuff. But most importantly, the thing that this version here can do that this one can't, that again took way longer than it probably should have. So say I've got my thing here. And what if we want to do something crazy like rotating it? Okay, so now it's rotated. So you can see here that these two now look different. So this one, I'm moving this around, and notice how I moved this left and right. So, and this is kind of illustrates how XSplit views rotation, is that it doesn't actually change. It actually is like taking the object and applying all the cropping to it and then rotating it, kind of thing. So you can see that this is, and so this can be obviously kind of confusing when attempting to change the layout of this thing. Whereas this one, I can move it around and it actually is correct. Up and down, left, right, hoo, ha, hoo, ha, hoo, ha. But the trick here, the weird part, and this is where I have to, like I said, there's various reasons why XSplit does different things in different ways. But I have to say, this particular thing took me a while. I was like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just like rotate it, do a transform on it, and rotate it, and then, but because all the values are the same, like all the, like all the values that I'm getting from XSplit are sort of pre-rotation. Then if I take it to my system and apply all those values and then rotate it, I should have everything correct. That is not the case. Because if you look here, let me make this more obvious by making this small. If you look here, this one that did not get the rotation properly still sees this as this size. So XSplit actually reports this as a thing that is this high and this wide. And then it says, oh, and it's also been rotated 90 degrees, which is confusing. But it doesn't rotate the cropping, because that would make my life easier. So you have to kind of reverse engineer what it's doing when it's reporting you stuff, and then redo that, which is kind of an odd. It's sort of a weird thing to sort of try to figure out how it actually operates, and you kind of have to like reverse engineer it. And the other part, to the extent that because you know, sort of in for whatever, in for a nickel, in for a penny, in for a pound. Yeah, in for a penny, in for a pound. I was like, okay, so say I want to rotate this, 90 degrees, boom, 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 no problem. But, sometimes I might want to rotate this, say, 120 degrees. So it's like on an angle. So you can see here, one of these is actually paying attention to the angle that it's on now. But, if you notice how XSplit is actually visualizing this is as it has rotated at 90 degrees, and how XSplit actually reports this is it is a object whose canvas has been rotated 90 degrees and who then has been rotated 30 degrees. So it's an object that has a Z rotation of 30 degrees, a canvas rotation 90 degrees. And so it reports it as being one of the, the dimensions that it reports are always in 90 degree increments. And then it also just applies that. So you have to, so that's sort of further math that has to be done in order to make this work. And let me tell you, it's, you think that the whole thing about I'll never have to use math after high school or after university or whatever. Can we do 69 degrees? Nice. I don't know if we can, but we can do 68 degrees. So would it be hard to reverse the UI, making it so that you're moving the crop around representation of the source? I don't think so. I mean, the principle would probably be about the same. Again, it would require to reverse a bunch of the math, but in principle, I don't think that would be a problem. And I could see how that would be useful. For my purposes, this is the way that I found most useful. Instead of, I guess, like what you're talking about would be sort of making the idea of sort of making the crop as kind of like a window into the object. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that you could do using the same system. So yeah, it definitely would be possible. I can kind of visualize how it would go, but yeah, it would just require redoing a bunch of the math for, things that were previously minus would have to be positive now, mostly. It would probably be like reversing a bunch of variable names and a bunch of equations directions. But yeah, the biggest issue with stuff like this, there were so many I guess sign errors or just geometry, trigonometry errors. So like I would move it this way and the object would move the other direction, or I'd try to like scale this and the opposite side would scale instead, stuff like that. It caused me more trouble than it was probably worth. It's because, again, like I said, this is something that really, this is kind of interesting because it's like I spent a bunch of effort on this, but you know, an update to XSplit tomorrow could basically wipe this out completely. Like if it could do this in XSplit, there's no extension that I can make that would be better than what, you know, they could do in XSplit, because they have access to the sort of underlying you know, the underlying stuff, so that you can be like, oh hey, I just push whatever alt in it, then I can move it around within the box. That's way easier than having to go over here and access it. By the way, I'm still working on this, like 3D transforms. That currently does not work for a variety of reasons. Again, it's part of it is decoding how XSplit is doing the 3D transformation, because it's not how HTML does 3D transformations. Like, it has 3 axes that it's rotating things around, but somehow if I rotate the object like this and then I take an HTML object and apply the same rotations to it, it does not end up the same. So they're doing something funky with it, and I haven't got a chance to sort of figure that out yet. And frankly, I don't know if it's really worth it. Like, the number of times I have to move an object that's been 3-dimensionally distorted is very seldom. Yeah, what would you even use? Would you even use 3D transformations? Probably not. I was like, hey, if I can do it easily, I might as well put that capability in. And then I tried it for a bit and I was like, I cannot do this easily. Axis rotation order? Yeah, it might be something like that. What do you use for a capture card? We use a variety of different capture cards throughout the studio. Here in the office we use here in Studio A, we use a Magewell HDMI capture card. I forget what the full name of it is, but Magewell something or other, HDMI Pro or something. And in Studio C we also use a Magewell card that is a oh, Magewell just updated their website. Fancy. Pro Capture HDMI, that's the one we use. Yeah, all the details have, but yeah, there's details that we use a Magewell card here, and a also in Studio C, and Studio B uses a Blackmagic and an AverMedia HDMI capture card and a Blackmagic SDI card. Boop, 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 boop. The let's see, is there, what else did I want to? Those diagrams, though, not your typical streaming setup. Yeah, I guess. Something that we've talked about before, sort of half in joking, but also actually, is that for whatever reason, we here at Loading Ready Run seem to end up doing things in a way that is like the most complicated way. And not deliberately. It's just like we seem to end up doing things in a way where, in a way that seems the most obvious to us, but once we've sort of gone down that track, we realized that nobody else is doing it that way, and we're like, oh. For, you know, because we tend to be, you know, fairly ambitious with our setups and stuff. So, you know, like I mean, as a small example, when we first got set up here for streaming, streaming video games, a priority for our setup here was to be able to stream basically any console that we wanted to, from, you know, the original Wii to PC to Xbox to and be able to sort of quickly switch between them and stuff, and even back to original Xbox and you know, PlayStation 2 and that kind of stuff. Like, we wanted to have things. So, and that added a whole host of complications to our streaming setup, switchers and converters and all this kind of stuff. But we figured that that was a priority. Even a Dreamcast, exactly. And like, you know, when we set up for Desert Bus or whatever, there's been a couple times. I remember we were having a problem with, I think it was actually with OBS. You know, in previous years, we've had various problems with Desert Bus with, you know, the stream like going down every X number of hours or whatever, you know, weird glitches with software and stuff. And yeah, it turned out that like we found this weird interaction between like OBS and other software that we were using to send the signal into OBS and different stuff. And we actually were talking to like the people, the developers, and they're like, yeah, that's definitely, I can see that. Yeah, that's a problem. We are not going to fix that, because like you're the only ones who have ever had a problem, who have ever tried to do it that way. But I guess it's a problem for you. Lay thick the Cat 6 through everything on the network. I mean, we have Cat 6 running through the walls here, and we do use it for various things, you know, network stuff, but as well as other fancy things. And we've been doing a fair amount of streaming using the NDI, the new tech. I forget what NDI stands for, but anyway, it's like a streaming. It's a video streaming standard that's specifically designed for sort of real time, sort of, I guess, internal streaming, like streaming between a camera or a computer or two computers and different stuff. And it's pretty cool. It's very low latency, and it worked quite well. But low latency, very high bandwidth. How it gets such low latency is that the compression system it uses is not, like, it's not uncompressed, but it's very low compression, because it wants to just send the stream out as quickly as possible. Like, the delay is something like less than a second. Like, it's like between like 2 and 400 milliseconds. Like, it's really fast. It's almost the same. Like, it's the delay with NDI, at least in our internal network, is almost the same as just a capture card. So it's very fast, but it uses approximately 100 gigabits per channel. So like when we did the LAN stream quite a few months ago now, where we were trying to run 6 computers on NDI into the one computer. It didn't work out, so we had some issues with that. It's a lot of bandwidth to be pushing out on, even on a you know, you've got a gigabit network, but you don't get like actually get gigabit speeds. And so pushing 600 gigabits per second over the network can be 600 megabits per second, not 600 gigabits. Yes. Sorry, yes. So it's 100 megabits per thing. So it was like 600 megabits per for the entire signal, and it started to drop frames. So we had to do some silly things. But we have a plan for doing that better next time. Redo the office in fiber. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's always 10 gigabit. Yeah, once you factor in overhead and all the network stuff, yeah. Is the plan less computers? No, because that would be less ambitious. The plan is 10 gigabit networking. So, like I said, this is sort of a show and tell thing. Just trying to think about what would be good to sort of show you. What else show you about this? So, like I said, so what I find interesting about this is that unlike the part of the reason why I wanted to show I chose this, you know, there's various little widgets and utilities and things that we use in our setup here. Part of the reason why I chose this one is that it's sort of a self-contained thing. I have I run an internal server here on the network that acts as kind of a messaging system that's sort of a WebSocket system that like sends messages around between like the overlay and the and controllers and different things that we used here, and that's and so a lot of the utilities that I've made interface with that messaging system. And that messaging system is not something that I can easily, at least at the moment anyway, it's not something that I can easily sort of open up and let other people access. Not because it's like got secret proprietary information in it, but just because it's a total, it's not applicable to other people, I guess. It's got like a whole bunch of hack stuff in it that is specific to like our needs. So would not be very useful to other people. But this thing it's just, you know, a connection between XSplit and the extension. So my hope is that there's a few little refinements I want to do to it, but my hope is that this is something that I will actually be able to put up on my GitHub and you allow people access. And theoretically, now, like I said, there's a whole bunch of math and internal conversion stuff that this is doing in order to connect to XSplit. But theoretically, the basic structure of it, there's no reason why it couldn't work with OBS as well and do the same thing, just using OBS commands rather than XSplit commands. I think that the like WebKit, like OBS WebKit or WebSocket functionality, I think it actually has the enough functionality that you could do something similar to this by getting the values from OBS, and presumably there'd be a whole different set of calculations you'd have to do in order to do the conversions to this. And I don't know if that's something that I want to do because we don't use OBS here in the office, but maybe I'll release it onto the internet and onto GitHub or whatever, and maybe somebody else would like to do that. I don't know. Has anyone accidentally gotten their brain to pronounce GitHub as GitHub? GitHub? No, but I kind of want that now. GitHub. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to show this off, or why I wanted to. You don't use OBS except with other software. It was not designed nice to play with. The other thing, like I said, I checked out OBS to see if it had this functionality, but I don't know anything about some of the other, like, you know, either vMix or Wirecast. I feel like Wirecast might be able to do something like this, just because it's a little bit more, I guess, designerly. It has other issues that we won't go into right now. But I don't know whether other programs, because it's an interesting thing. Like it's strange to me that like this is not a function that people are interested in adding to their streaming software. Because to me, it seems like something that is like a super useful no-brainer. But maybe that's just because I'm from like a page layout background. All hail FFmpeg. I do not think, even if you use FFmpeg for streaming, more power to you. I do not think this setup will work with that. I don't know how this would function on the command line. I feel like it would be a problem. GitHub. But anyway, so FFmpeg can definitely do this sort of thing, but I'd hate to see the flags. Yeah. The concept of attempting to actually, like, GitHub or FFmpeg could do some great stuff in terms of like taking a video and streaming it. The idea of trying to actually like build some sort of UI using FFmpeg, like just by putting it onto the command line. I think FFmpeg can like overlay layers on top of each other, so I guess you could do something, but I do not know how that would work. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure XSplit uses FFmpeg or something similar to actually do the streaming part, but I feel like maybe that's just my not being a Linux guy. I know, shock. But I feel like I would not want to actually like design my interface on the command line. QLab. I have not heard of QLab. Is that the one that's based on oh, what was the... Oh, no, it's gone now. But yeah, there's a couple of different this interface is super... Is it like you sort of like connect different components together in sort of a visual interface with sort of wires? What am I thinking of for that? Anyway. No, it's not a stream. Yeah, it's just like a UI program, right? And then you need software to put it up. It's the stuff that's available in terms of, you know, making UIs for streaming software has really come very far. There's online stuff like, you know, Streamlabs and different things that make little widgets and stuff. And then there's also stuff like the one they use for HDQ, the guys who they've open sourced that, I think, which is basically the same. And so there's like the system that we use, which is the one that I built, which is appropriately called Nifty overlay, because that's what I call everything. Is the system that I built, and it was one of those things where because around the same time I was building the system that we were using, the HDQ guys came out with their setup, or they released their system. Why can I not remember the name of it? Anyway, and again, and the idea, and we were sort of converging on the same idea, the idea of sort of building interfaces in HTML that can then be loaded into XSplit or to OBS or whatever, and then you have sort of a separate page that's configuration stuff, and then you can kind of build using existing HTML development skills. You can build UIs for streaming, which is pretty handy. Anyway, So I'll try to keep I'll keep you up to date about when if and when I can. Oh yeah, let's make that not like that. Hey. Perfect. The web. I've heard Casper. I've heard interesting things about Casper CG. I haven't I've messed around with it a little bit, but I haven't really successfully got it working the way I wanted to. But that's possibly just mine not spending enough time with it. There's a bit of a mask at the top. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's a beast, but it's powerful. Yeah. And I mean, that's the case with a lot of these things. Obviously, they're built, they're built by people. The people who are building them are obviously building them for their own usage mostly. And so they're built with sort of their own mentality, I guess, in mind, which can be a little bit confusing sometimes, or different people sort of the Nifty overlay theme that I built works in a way that makes sense to me. The other things that other people build might not, might work differently for other people. It just depends on sort of what your goals are, what your requirements are, what your time is, and what your sort of skill set is in terms of what you want to build, what you want to do. Yeah, frankly, I'm very happy that I was a web developer for a very long time, and I'm still a web developer, even though it's not what I do primarily. But the thing is, I guess I'm not like a website developer, but it turns out that it's kind of cool that a lot of the web technologies now are coming into all sorts of different places. With Node, you can use them on the back end, and there's with all these things for streaming software where you can sort of have embedded web browsers and stuff. It turns out that and that JavaScript has become bigger and bigger as a program, or as a programming language, as a scripting language. It's kind of handy that all the existing infrastructure or the existing skill set for HTML development can actually translate quite over. NodeCG. NodeCG is the one I was thinking of. That's the one that's done by the AGDQ guys. And maybe it's NodeCG named after Casper CG. Anyway. But yeah, and of course there is also the aspect of the sort of everything when all you have is a hammer thing, because whenever I think about a problem, immediately I'm thinking how can I do this in a web interface, because that's what I know how to build, right? I imagine if you're a Python developer, or you're a Java developer, or you're a whatever, different C developer, Swift developer, whatever, you're always thinking about I know how to do this. I would make an app to do the whatever. But anyway, so I guess it's gonna be a little bit of a short stream. Not too much else to talk about with this, but I just thought that would be kind of a fun thing to do. Like I said, it was gonna normally be a TDSF tonight, but the Tinker Tailor, Ian, and various other people are busy, so I thought this would be a nice replacement. And so coming up next, we have Now Kiss. This, by the way, a little web thing that goes and talks to our Google Calendar and talks to the Twitch events page, grabs pictures and puts them together and stuff, formats in HTML. Which is incidentally the same. It's actually the same code as this, just formatting it in a different way. So now Kiss is coming up. And then we got the crapshoot, where it's going to be some writing crapshoots. We're going to be writing some future crap shots. Paper fight. We got the tribal cube. Ben is building his very own cube, and we're going to be drafting it on Friday night. Paper fight. Adam's Game House, where he's going to be playing Horizon Zero Dawn. Maybe. He always says that he's going to be playing Horizon Zero Dawn, but who knows? Maybe he'll play Dauntless. You should. Our stream this morning of James and I playing Dauntless is probably not an accurate depiction of what it's like to play Dauntless, because we encountered some bugs, and also we spent a lot of time being carried by Adam, who's way higher level than we are. But it's a cool game. And then we got Rhythm Cafe on Sunday, where they're going to be going Evangelion Shin Gekijuban Third Impact. I'm going to say that that's what they're playing. And I'm assuming that that is a rhythm game and not just an anime that they're watching. Then we got Checkpoint Plus. And then on Dice Friends on Monday, we've got Dusk City Outlaws. So we did the Enigma of the Star Tunnels is over now. It was just the 3-episode run. But Dusk City we're doing a one-shot thing of Dusk City Outlaws, which you may have seen us play a couple years, well, probably a couple years ago now, back in Moonbase Delta. We did that. It's a neat kind of it's like you do like a heist. It reminds me a little bit of the Fate system in that it's sort of very loose. Lots of sort of improvisational stuff. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And that's a one shot, and then we're going to be going back into a longer campaign afterwards, and with seeing some the return of some of your, I'd like to think, favorite characters. So that should be fun. So thank you very much for watching, and I am going to go away now. So I will see all y'all later.